Why? Because the next Apple TV 4K, the one rumored to launch spring or fall 2026, isn't just another incremental box. It's the biggest leap since the original 4K model dropped in 2017. And today I'm going to walk you through every single credible leak, every plausible rumor, every wild speculation that actually makes sense, and tell you exactly what it means for your living room in 2026 and beyond. Buckle up, because once you hear what's coming, you're not going to look at your current streaming box the same way again. Let's start with the single biggest headline that keeps resurfacing from multiple independent supply chain sources in Asia. M4 Pro. Yes, you heard that right, not M4, not the base M4 we got in the iPad Pro, but the higher-end M4 Pro Silicon. The same chip family that's rumored to power the next MacBook Pro 14-inch base model. Why does that matter? Because for the first time ever, Apple TV would have more GPU cores and more neural engine performance than the Mac Mini sitting right next to it on the shelf. We're talking hardware ray tracing, mesh shading, dynamic caching features that right now only exist in consoles and high-end PCs. And Apple is supposedly bringing all of that into a device that costs under $200. But it gets crazier. Multiple leakers, including one who has been eerily accurate about A18 and M4 naming, are saying the 2026 Apple TV will finally get 120Hz promotion support on the HDMI output, not just 4K 120Hz pass-through, but native 4K 120Hz output from tvOS itself. Think about that for a second. Your Apple TV UI, your games from Apple Arcade, your Apple Fitness Plus workouts, your FaceTime calls, all running buttery smooth at 120 frames per second. If you've ever used an iPad Pro 120Hz screen and then gone back to a 60Hz television, you know how jarring that drop feels. Apple is supposedly closing that gap forever in 2026. Now let's talk about the thing everyone really cares about, gaming. We already know Apple has been pushing Apple Arcade hard and bringing bigger titles over. But the leaks suggest they're going way beyond that. Word is they're targeting parity, or at least very close parity, with Xbox Series S level performance in a tiny box. How? The rumored M4 Pro plus 16 GB of unified memory baseline. Yes, 16 GB is the floor according to 3 different supply chain whispers. That's double what we have right now. And because it's unified memory, the GPU can access every last byte instantly. Combine that with hardware-accelerated ray tracing and you start to see why some people are calling this the console killer that quietly sits under your TV. But here's where it gets really interesting. Several sources, including one that nailed the Vision Pro Dual 4K Micro LED spec early, are claiming Apple is finally bringing a version of the Vision Pro's foveated rendering technology down to the Apple TV, not for VR but for regular TV gaming. The idea is simple. Render the center of your vision at full quality and drop the peripheral resolution aggressively, because the Apple TV knows exactly where you're looking thanks to, wait for it, the new Siri remote with eye tracking. That's right. Multiple low-resolution camera leaks show a tiny IR emitter and sensor array on the front of the 2026 remote. It's supposedly using the same basic principle as the iPhone Face ID dot projector, but way simpler and cheaper. Just enough to track which part of the screen your eyes are focused on. If that sounds far-fetched, remember that Apple already has patent after patent on gaze contingent rendering for TVs and set-top boxes. And they've been quietly buying small eye-tracking companies for years. So when 3 separate sources mention eye-aware rendering for the 2026 model, it stops sounding like fantasy and starts sounding like Apple's next quiet revolution. Let's shift to picture quality, because that's still the #1 reason most people buy an Apple TV. The leaks here are actually pretty consistent. We're getting a brand new custom image signal processor being called ISP4 internally. That's built on a 3nm class process just like the M4 family. This ISP is supposedly doing real-time AI upscaling that's noticeably better than anything we've seen from NVIDIA, AMD, or even the latest Sony Bravia XR chip. The claim floating around is 4K content upscaled from 1080p will look closer to native 4K than ever before, with almost no haloing or artificial sharpening artifacts. And get this, they're supposedly adding Dolby Vision Filmmaker mode support with automatic scene-by-scene dynamic tone mapping that adjusts based on your room's ambient light sensor data. The Apple TV would talk to your HomeKit lights, slowly dim them during dark scenes, then bring them back up. It's the kind of ecosystem trick only Apple can pull off. Storage and ports, another hot topic. The base model is rumored to jump to 128 GB standard. No more 64 GB joke in 2026. And the higher-end model